There's a Harry Potter quiz.
Oh.
I'm in Gryffindor. My
I
son
love
is a
those.
Slytherin. I'm sorry. My daughter is a Slytherin. My son is a Ravenclaw. And we have all concluded that my mother is probably a Hufflepuff.
Oh.
So if you want a quick fun one, that's
Yeah.
a good one to take.
The Slytherin one, is that accurate?
Oh, she's self-identified. And everybody
funny.
agreed with her.
Okay. Well, good for you, Mom, putting up with a Slytherin kid.
She's wonderful.
Hello and welcome to the Inspired Woman Podcast. I'm Marcy Narum. This podcast is dedicated to impacting a multitude of women with its mission to celebrate, encourage, empower, educate, entertain, and connect women. This episode is brought to you by Century 21 Morrison Realty in Bismarck. Sue Jacobson and Jamie Christensen are results-oriented, full-time professional real estate agents, and they will bring a caring, warm, enthusiastic, energetic style to help you sell or buy your home. Call Jamie at 391-5383 at 226-5535.
Amber Schatz here, talking with Noreen, although your full name is Noreen.
Yes. I was named after my maternal grandmother. Actually, both of my grandmothers.
Oh, wow.
Oh gosh, we're getting personal early.
Yeah.
Because I was named after my maternal grandmother, Noreen, and my paternal grandmother, who her name was Madeline Louise, but she hated the name Madeline, so my middle name is Louise.
Oh, my goodness.
And I always hated both of my names when I was growing up. And because I'm not the oldest daughter. I'm like, why would you name the second daughter after the grandmother's? That's supposed to be a first daughter thing. And her name is very normal. She's Pam. Pamela Beth. And I'm like, Pamela Beth to Noreen Louise. I'm like, come on. And you didn't even pick the best name. Like Madeline.
Madeline is gorgeous. She didn't
So,
like the name Madeline?
She hated the name Madeline. My dad said she would have been furious had we named you. And so, yeah, I got Noreen Louise. I appreciate it more as an adult, but I really didn't like it growing up.
I like it because it's really unique. I don't know anyone else with that name, and I think it's pretty. I like Louise. I bet that's grown on you over time.
It has. And I've met some other Noreens along the way, so that's been kind of cool too. We always kind of bond immediately. Oh, another one.
And
it
you're
doesn't happen often.
And you're okay being called Nori, though. That's kind of your nickname, right?
Yes.
Who gave you that, or where did that come from?
I honestly grew up as long as I can remember being called Nori. My dad called me Reedy Bug. But in school, I was always Nori.
That's so cute. I need to go back to this the second child being named after the grandmas, though.
I know, right?
So your sister's name is Pamela or Pam,
My oldest sister, yes.
and not named after anyone else?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And my younger sister had a very normal name too, Jennifer.
That is so funny.
So like middle child doesn't have enough issues. I
Right.
get the weird names too.
Hey, I agree. I'm also a middle child, so I know all about that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we middle children like to have attention, so maybe that's why they gave you the name that might give you a little extra attention. I don't know.
They had a well thought out plan.
Yeah. I love this. Okay, we're jumping right in. Where are you from anyway?
Well, my dad was in the Air Force, so I was born in Puerto Rico, and we moved around until I was in first grade. We moved to North Dakota, actually for the second time. My dad had been stationed in North Dakota before, in Grand Forks, when I was maybe 2, I think. And then we moved back to North Dakota in Minot
Wow.
when I was a first grader.
Can you imagine now, like, traveling with someone as young as 2, like moving from Puerto Rico to North Dakota?
I would not have wanted to do it. I don't know how people spend years and years in the military traveling. When they got to North Dakota, my parents decided, there were 3 daughters and the school systems were good and it's not such a bad place to stay. And the Air Force just decided, hey, if we've got people who are willing to stay here, we might as well let them.
Let's invest in these people.
Yeah.
And then you ended up being in the National Guard as well, right?
Right. I was in the Army National Guard. At the time when we looked at the Air Force and the Army had better school opportunities. So I ended up in the Army.
Is that something, that you did, because your dad was?
No, not really. Although I have a lot of military on both sides of my family. My grandfather on my paternal side was in the Navy, and I believe his father was too. And my mom's family, my dad was in the British Army.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of military background, but when the Guard first called, the recruiting in the junior high, or not junior high, junior year, I basically told them I am not at all interested.
No thanks.
And, my older sister was just a couple years older than me. So when I became a senior, I started looking at how am I going to go to school? And my parents were helping her at the time. And I said, well, I don't really want to wait. They said, if you will wait till she's done, we'll help you too. I'm like, who wants to wait?
Right. Yeah.
So I ended up joining the Army. And my mother cried. She said, you're my only daughter who wears dresses. So, and she cried when I joined the Army. And I think she had a point because I quit wearing dresses. So I wear them very, very rarely.
I've never seen you in a dress.
Yeah.
We need to have like one day a month or something. Dress day.
Plan out when I see you. It's
Yeah.
like, uh-oh. Got to get a dress on.
Well, I know you through Inspired Woman magazine.
Yes.
Tell me about your connection or how you got part of this world.
Oh my goodness. Well, it started because I've been friends with Marcy for a very long time. As my work in the Guard, I worked full time, and I met her through the Guard, and we just stayed friends, and trying to cover a lot of time there, but we stayed connected and became friends. And when she started this venture, she asked if I would be involved. I said, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and, advisory board members help write stories and do all kinds of things for the magazine. You spoke at the conference last year and did such a great
honor
job.
to do that. Thank you.
It was fantastic. What is it like having the spotlight on you for this podcast? Because I know not everyone who writes stories is like, I'm not used to that being about me.
So I have so many thoughts.
I'm so glad, Noreen. Your laugh is the best. Can I just say that? I don't mean to make you think about it too much, but you have a full body laugh and it makes me so happy. I just hope you know that. So,
thank you.
Sorry.
Well, Marcy actually had to send me a message and say, excuse me, are we going to do a podcast? And I was like, okay.
I've been dragging my feet.
So it's a little complicated, I would say, because I'm an introvert. So I'm super comfortable having conversations with a very small group of people. Like one-on-one is awesome. And more so with people I'm comfortable with, right? So it's a little out of my comfort zone to go, oh gosh, I don't know what we're talking about. I don't know what you're going to ask me. But I also train a lot for a living. So as somebody who is not necessarily one who likes the spotlight, I'm not unaccustomed to being the center of attention. But maybe it's mind games that I play on myself, because I don't necessarily think that training is about me. I think it's about facilitating a conversation. Because I had somebody ask me once if I would be on their speaker bureau. After having worked with this individual as a trainer for many, I trained for them. She said, would you be on our speakers bureau? And I said, oh, I don't think so. And when she asked me why, I said, I don't like public speaking. And she gave me the funniest look and she said, I pay you to do that. And in my mind, it's different because if I think I'm just going to be talking for an hour about things that are interesting to me, I'm like, well, I would get bored. Why wouldn't you get bored? But when I am training, it's more of a conversation and having people think about themselves and how it applies to what they're doing. So it feels different.
Well,
I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, you did. And so many more. I'm just like, you are trained in helping people understand kind of their strengths.
That's one of the things.
One of the many.
Yes.
Tell us more about what you do.
Well, I was trained as a social worker. So I was actually a licensed social worker for a couple of decades when I never used it, but it was always one of those things. I worked hard for this. I'm going to keep it. But I worked full-time for the Guard. And in the Guard, my first full-time job with them was drug demand reduction. So it was a lot of education, a lot of training, a lot of team building stuff. And I got qualified to teach True Colors at that point, which is a system to understand yourself and other people. and then how do people interact. And I just fell in love with assessments. You know, I had taken them in school, but as I guess, I don't want to say typical college student, but as a college student with a whole bunch of other things going on, it didn't stick really very well. And then as I started taking the leadership classes as a student in the Guard and teaching classes, I became more and more aware that the personality assessments give you a real window into who you are, how you operate, how you prefer to behave, what impact you have on the world, and then also how other people work. And boy, other people don't work the same way I do. They don't think the same way I do. And if I'm making those assumptions, I'm going to be wrong so many times. So I started, I think, with True Colors was the first assessment I got trained in. And I'm a master practitioner with the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. I use Clifton Strengths. I'm a certified Clifton Strengths coach, which is what I spoke about at the conference. And I also do emotional intelligence and some career reports and things like that. Pretty much anything that has to do with, hey, can I understand people better? I'm just fascinated with it.
I'm worried you're looking at me and you're like, yep, the way she's sitting, she's crazy. Now I'm like self-conscious.
Most of them don't assess that anyway. You're good.
I'm all self-conscious. But I am fascinated with all of your training and what you do. And going back to you saying that you're an introvert, and the fact that I think most people may assume, oh, wow, I'm surprised to hear her say that. Because you are bubbly, I would say, and, you know, outgoing or seemingly confident. And so, you know, are there a lot of misconceptions about what an introvert are?
Absolutely. Yes, they really are. And the main thing being is that introversion is really about how we energize. So it doesn't mean that you can't be outgoing or that you can't be extroverted, that you can't stand up in front of people and talk. But when you are dealing with the outside world, you're spending your energy, basically. It's like you have a little reservoir energy or a battery, if you want to think of it that way. And when you're doing those things as an introvert, you are draining your energy. So you need to balance that by finding out how do you rebuild it. And for people with introversion, a preference for introversion, a lot of times that's being alone and being quiet and being with your thoughts and reading movies, but more solitary activities. And the opposite is true for extroverts. Extroverts, those who have a preference for extroversion, also, you know, they gain energy by interacting with the outside world, and that's how they build, you know, boost up their battery. But if they are in the situation where they have to be alone and be quiet, then that drains them, and they're like, they need to go out and they need to build that back up.
That's so interesting. And, you know, I don't know about, you know, what most people do, but do you think most people know what they are or understand themselves?
I think a lot of times when people have a framework to help them understand, like a lot of the comments I get is that, oh, that makes sense. Oh, okay, that's, you know, when I did a strengths assessment with my sister, and strengths doesn't talk about introversion and extroversion, but I know what my sister's type is as well. She's taken the MBTI. But when we were sitting down and doing the strengths assessment, we were looking through her reports, she read through the whole thing and she said, well, that explains a lot.
Yeah.
You know, so it helps to provide a framework for, okay, I have a consistent pattern of behavior in this way. And now that I have brought that to awareness, it gives you some choice in, is it working for you? And if it's not working, what can you do about it? Because there are ways to help yourself.
Yeah.
Once you know.
It kind of reminds me of that 5 Love Languages book. Just in that awareness, like you were saying, oh, now I get it, you know, why this makes me mad when he does that and I do this, or, you know, something like that.
Right. And, you know, one of the things that stood out, and I did leadership training classes, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator was always on the first full day. So we'd bring them in, we'd introduce them, you know, we'd do some of the initial stuff, but the first class they had was on the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. And a lot of times people would say, oh, so my spouse isn't trying to drive me crazy. And I'd say, well, I can't guarantee that, but odds are no.
Yeah, that's a relief. If someone is watching or hearing this and they're thinking, you know, I'd like to know more about myself, what is kind of the number one step you think they should take toward kind of getting to know their behaviors?
Well, I think for me, one of the ways that I found a lot of this information is reading. I love to read. If that's not an option, there are some online places that you can go. One thing I would recommend, though, is finding somebody who does know about the background on it, because there are some things that are misunderstood. And while there are great resources online, I would make sure that those resources have enough information to make sure that you're validated in your assessment. So there are a lot of wonderful resources. I love the internet.
Yeah.
Input is one of my strengths.
Yeah.
So it's like, more information is better.
Yeah. Okay.
But I also have Maximizer High, it's incredibly important to make sure that your information is presented by people who know what they're talking about.
Okay. So they should contact you, right?
Or somebody who has training. I'm not the only one who loves this stuff and is qualified to do a good job with it. So
how about a quick quiz maybe they could take to pique their interest? Which one should they take?
A quick quiz?
Or,
oh my gosh.
I guess maybe I shouldn't say quick, but.
Well, one that's really fun is there's a Harry Potter quiz. I'm in Gryffindor. My son is a Slytherin. I'm sorry. My daughter is a Slytherin. My son is a Ravenclaw. And we have all concluded that my mother is probably a Hufflepuff. So if you want a quick fun one, that's a good one to take.
The Slytherin one, is that accurate?
Oh, she's self-identified. And everybody agreed with her.
Okay. Well, good for you, Mom, putting up with a Slytherin kid.
She's wonderful.
So speaking back about the magazine, how many stories have you done? Do you have a favorite one that kind of sticks out?
I think I've probably done 11 or 12. Generally I was doing every other month, and
it's hard to pick a favorite. It's wrong of me to even
I've got
ask.
a favorite. It's just a little emotional. I wrote one about my dad.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, my dad was in the Air Force, and he and my mom, he'd always wanted to go to Hawaii. He was in Hawaii during Pearl Harbor. I mentioned that my grandfather was in the Navy, and he was stationed in Hawaii when Pearl Harbor happened. My dad remembers going on a picnic with his mom that day when my grandfather was working. So it had always been a dream of my dad's to go back to Hawaii. And we had tried to arrange it for their 50th anniversary, but it didn't quite work out because my mom wanted everybody to go.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't in the cards. And a few years later, I'm not sure. I had this feeling. It's like, my parents were both in their 80s? My mom might have been 79, but it's like, Dad's getting older. We should probably make this trip happen while they're still healthy, because they were both healthy. And so we got it all arranged. We all went to Hawaii. My mom and dad, my sister, and my kids, and had just a wonderful, wonderful trip. It was incredible. We went to Pearl Harbor, did all of the things, swam in a waterfall. My dad didn't swim, but he watched us. My mom did.
Yeah.
And he ended up very suddenly and unexpectedly passing away like 2 weeks after we got back.
Oh my gosh.
We're all super happy that we got that trip.
Oh,
but it was very much a shock, because as I said, he was a very healthy, and just a couple of weeks after he ended up coming, because they traveled on their way back. They went to Minneapolis. He was dancing in a club in Minneapolis with this girl who was like 25. So we just weren't prepared or expecting it at all.
Oh, I'm so glad you went on that trip.
Yeah.
And
we have wonderful memories of it, and so lucky to have them.
Beautiful. And so was writing about it, what was that like for you?
Well, it just felt right, because it was the July edition, and I was like, the theme was patriotism, and I'm like, how do I not write about my dad?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So
now you have 2 sisters, one older, one younger.
yes.
What was that like growing up in a household with three sisters? Well, 2 sisters, but 3 of you total.
Gosh, I I don't know how to answer that. It was good.
Yeah.
We were, I kind of think maybe I was just off doing my own thing.
Yeah.
It was good. We had a good childhood.
Yeah. And do they live in the area? Are you guys still close? And
My sister passed away several years ago. So she was in a car accident, and when she was on vacation, So these vacations on our family.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. A little, that it's been more time without. It was, again, this may seem a little bit morbid. What we joke in our family is that we all have to keep things on good terms, because when we go fast. Because my sister died quickly, my aunt died very suddenly and unexpectedly, and my dad. So we do it. Like I said, it sounds morbid, but we're like, well, we can't fight. We always say I love you on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
well, there sounds like there's a big humor component to your family. Good humor is something I would describe you as having, for sure.
Yeah, we laugh. We laugh. I think maybe we're a little sarcastic sometimes and a little irreverent, but
you have to do that sometimes too.
Yeah.
Speaking about humor, I guess, and Harry Potter, and you were sharing with me before that you have a grand pig.
I have a grand pig.
Which, hearing that, it just sounds very interesting.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your grand pig?
I will. My grand pig is Mooney. And I ended up with a grand pig because my daughter and her roommate bought guinea pigs at probably an hour after I told them don't buy any pets when they went to visit Petco. And a pig ended up moving home with me, but my daughter became very allergic to her. And so yes, I am the proud owner of a grand pig.
Inherited it.
And she's adorable. I showed you pictures.
I know. I have to admit, when I was like, oh, I don't really like those kinds of things, but she's cute. Yeah. She is kind of cute. And then I'm sure she's grown on you. Does she get to leave her cage, or? She
does. Okay. At first I was a little cautious because I thought if she gets away and gets into something, I'm never going to get her back.
Right.
But now I if I'm cleaning out her cage, I'll just put her on the floor and she just runs around, and I figured at some point, well, she'll get hungry and come back.
She'll find where the food is.
But I don't really, I was like, do I have any places that she could get where I wouldn't be able to get her back? And I don't think I do on that floor, because she has stayed away from the stairs. Yeah. So
she knows. She's like, no, not going down there. And she's named after Mad Eye Mooney, right?
She's
from something from Harry Potter.
I'm
okay,
blanking out right now, but yes, she's named after Harry Potter.
Yeah. We'll have Nolan look into that. Mooney. He's our production behind the camera researcher.
It wasn't Mad Eye. It was one of the group of friends. So the dogs, Mooney. So it was the dog and the rat, Scabbers. And Mooney, and people are going to be like, you are not a Harry Potter fan. I am. I just have a horrible memory.
Yes, she is. She raised a child whose house Slytherin.
We still have the original books that we bought back in the day, so the hardcovers. And I'm like, hey, if you want to read book 1, I can give it. It's in 8 pieces, but it literally comes in chunks now because it's been read so many times.
I love talking with people like that, because same for me. People say, what's your favorite book? And sometimes I'm like, Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I realize I'm, mid-30s, but I don't care. It made me so excited to read. That last book that came out, I was working in the news at the time, and I had to do a story on the line out the door at the bookstore.
Yes.
And that was in South Dakota. But it was incredible for lining up for a book to come out. I mean, it was so exciting, so much fun. And I can't even imagine that today, sadly.
Well, I have my son to thank, because he was at the age where, he would say, I want to read this book. And he and my mom would fight over the book. She'd be like, are you done reading it yet? He's like, no, you can't have it yet. I'm not done.
Yeah.
And he would kind of nag me. He's like, Mom, you need to read this book. You need to read this book. And I wasn't terribly interested. Mm-hmm. And then I found out that there was this big push to ban the books. And I was like, oh, intriguing. I wonder why they're trying to ban the books. And that got me interested in them.
Yeah.
So
it did the opposite effect.
It did. Mm-hmm. And then when we were going on a family vacation, Michael said, hey, this is a great time for you to read the book. So I started the book 1 on the plane and read nonstop until I was finished with it. And then I had to read all of them because I think I was probably 3 books in, or they were 3 books out before I started reading them. So I read nonstop. It'd be like, okay, kids, we're having pizza for dinner because I'm still reading.
Right.
And they're just so wonderfully well written and creative. And the way she can tie things together throughout the books was amazing to me. It's a work of art.
It is. I've thought, how many times have you, just the once, or have you read them again? Ooh, I'm about to be impressed.
I've read them several times. And in fact, I'm reading them again now because one of my favorite podcasts is called Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. Okay. And it is 2 divinity graduates from Harvard who started a podcast by going through Harry Potter. So they will go chapter by chapter. It's been on for a while because they're in book 5 now, and they pick a theme for the week to read that chapter through. And then they also use a different way of assessing the book with a biblical perspective. Like they'll take different religions and say, how does this religion use a text to glean messages from it? And then they do that as well. And it's super interesting to me. And I'm not a religious person. I was not brought up as a religious person. So people go, you're listening to a podcast called Harry Potter and the Sacred Text? And it's like, it's fabulous.
I know. You're going to send me there. They should probably get you on their advertising team. Are they pointing things out that you had noticed before? Or are you totally like, oh, wow?
It's interesting because they are looking at the text through a specific theme each week. It does make you really look at it in a different way. Mm-hmm. And my son is so impressed that I'm reading it chapter by chapter, because I will read the chapter for that week and then not read anymore. And he's like, Mom, I'm so impressed you can do it. But it's because I've read them so many times. Yeah. It's like, well, it's not like I don't know what's going to happen.
Right. I actually remember, sorry, we're just geeking out here at this point.
Who would have thought? I never would have guessed we'd be talking about Harry Potter.
I remember reading the line, and I can almost not even say it without crying, where you think he's going to die. And I was like, in horror. The tears were just streaming, and it was like the brave little boy from the cupboard like marched in. I'm seriously crying right now. I can't even say it.
I cried more than once reading the books.
Yes.
I'm like, it's emotional. You get attached in there, and it's just so real. You know, that they tap into emotions that people feel, and the friendship and the fear and the courage and the love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh man, we should just pretty much call this Inspired Potter magazine at this point. But yeah, we need to. Have you been part of a book club with that or anything?
I haven't.
We need to start one. I think.
Oh my gosh, that would be.
That would be fun, right? Just all Harry Potter.
Yes, that'd be a great idea.
Okay, there we go. Got an idea. Check.
Mooney was one of the marauders. Lupin turns into
Lupin, the werewolf.
Oh, gotcha.
Thank you.
Yeah. So why am I thinking Mad-Eye Mooney?
Mad-Eye Mooney is a character.
His name is Mad-Eye Mooney. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Moody. Oh. Mad-Eye Moody.
Moody. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's right. And he has the weird eye. And I actually had a problem with his whole thing in the movie, but I won't get into it. We'll talk about that at our book club, maybe.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Is there anything else, I guess, you'd like to share about yourself and being part of Inspired Woman magazine?
Just, it's not about myself, but I am just so honored to be a part of this group of women. They're amazing. I have developed new friendships from it, and just to see. Okay, and this is more on a personal level because I have known Marcy for so long. Her passion and the energy and creative drive that she has and puts into this, it's just wonderful to be a part of.
It's awesome. And you said it so well. And I'm so glad I got to know you through this magazine because you're awesome.
You are awesome too. I was so looking forward to seeing you because we had so much fun at the conference.
I know, a little too much fun, but that's for another podcast, another day.
Okay.
And
when we're not being recorded.
Right, exactly. All right, thanks.
Inspired Woman podcast is sponsored by Quantum Productions, the home of the award-winning director and cinematographer Nolan Johnson. He creates unique high-end video products throughout the Midwest. You can check him out at quantumprond.com.